Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast, where your host, Josh Sweeney, will give you, the business leaders, HR professionals, and company culture aficionados, the knowledge you need to take your company culture to the next level.
Welcome to the Epic Company Culture Podcast. My name is Josh Sweeney, and this is Season 4, where we interview business leaders and company culture experts to learn more about their experience with company culture. Today, we are joined by Kurt Uhlir of Ethereal Innovations to learn about all of his successes, challenges, struggles, everything that goes into company culture and all the amazing businesses that he's worked in. Can you introduce yourself, Kurt?
Yeah, so Kurt Uhlir, sees kind of a seasoned business executive, much more of a marketer by trade, but I've been the operator, I've been in the big chair, kind of decided I'm much better at being the kingmaker or queenmaker now,
So what does that involve, being the kingmaker or queenmaker?
I mean, I know, as you do, there's a lot of responsibility when you're in the big chair, when you're the CEO or president. To a large degree, I'd much rather tell stories, showcase that person, and help them, take a little bit of the burden off of them, and usually by marketing and storytelling and B2B brands.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways people can tell their story. I know we've been trying to get out there and tell our story, and I think we actually talked about that when we ran into each other last time. You were like, "Hey, I've seen you around."
Yeah, I saw you around, and I kind of feel like you're taking the Gary Vaynerchuk approach for just giving value to people.
Yeah, and I love that. I was like, "Well, thank you for that compliment," because Gary V and watching a lot of that was actually how this got started. I was like, I want to take massive action. I want to get out there. I want to talk with people. I want to learn. And so, yeah, you couldn't have mentioned a better name for me, because like, hey, I hit it on the mark.
Well, you're definitely living what you're trying to aim for at that point then.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So Ethereal Innovations, let's start with what you're doing now, and then we'll work back through some experiences. So tell us about how that works, kind of the size of the organization, how you're working on company culture within that.
So Ethereal Innovations is a boutique marketing agency. So it's my wife and I primarily, and we come in and we step in to fill the gap for senior leadership within the marketing organization. So when a B2B technology company's lost that chief marketer, so they're not in a rush to find the next one, we'll step in for 3, 6, 9 months and kind of be the head of marketing or the CMO for them. We'll also at other times step into sometimes much larger organizations where they have a good operational team, and we'll kind of revamp everything that's going for marketing. A lot of times we found the sweet spot where brands have a good story, they have a good operations team, they just don't know how to assemble it in a way and put together a strategy to let those people do what they're really good at. So my wife started actually the agency a couple of years ago. When I stepped out of my previous company, I took 12 months off, and when a few things happened that kind of pulled me back into the business world, I started consulting with her and through another organization that I work with as well.
Gotcha. So you took 12 months off.
Yep.
Tell me about that, because that sounds really amazing. I haven't done that yet. What'd you do for 12 months?
Well, I wasted about 60 days trying to figure out how I was going to be somewhat busy, just enough to keep interested. And I realized I wasn't really resting. And the whole point was to, one, intentionally rest, and to let my wife get to know me a little bit, because she'd only known me as startup guy and the company that I was building. And so I took the next 30 days then and just literally rested, hiked, spent a bunch of time at our mountain property, and but ended up taking almost 18 months off, which was some small consulting projects on the side, but really just resting, a bunch of reading. So.
Yeah. So how was that rest period? Was it everything you thought it would be, or did you get bored?
I did not get bored, really.
Awesome.
After I learned how to intentionally rest, I have one of my mentors in town does not understand that concept, so he'd push back at me every time he'd see me. He's like, "How do you not do anything?" And I'm like, "No, I'm doing things, but it's things that I want to." So almost more like a 18-month Sabbath in some ways. So if I wanted to meet with friends, if I wanted to take on some projects, I did, but just not that I had to go into an office. And I spent a lot of time just trying to love on my wife and cherish her. That part of the vows most people miss.
Right. Apparently that's important to make sure that you do at some point during the startup world, right?
Yeah, and something that I had not done very well before. Still learning.
I always share, I've listened to, 35 to 60 audio books a year, all nonfiction. And for the longest time, they were all business books. And, then once you get into a challenging situation, you realize, like I realized at least, wait, there are actually relationship books out there. I could have been reading. I could have been doing a much better job, but never took that step. So now I'm just, a little more cognizant of that, and that there's other materials and people who've been through those challenges and, built those relationships. With that, you took 18 months off. Other than hiking, what else did you do?
So before then, I'd been the chairman of the Made in America movement. So I continued to work with them. That's kind of a passion project of me and of mine. And so I did spend a lot of time doing that. I had some investments in town as well. So when I came back from my cabin trip, I kind of sent an email to a few of the companies and said, so here's the deal. I will work for free on things that will move the needle if it has a discrete endpoint and it's challenging. So make it fun. And I'll pick what I want to work on. And so I did a lot of things like that during that time period as well.
And did you find enough people, so kind of talking about company culture a little bit, I mean, did you find enough people who had a discrete enough endpoint that knew their goals and knew their strategy? And what was kind of the over-under on people who did and didn't have, the clear goals that you set out?
Yeah. One company of probably the 10 that I emailed had a clear, discrete thing at that time. I got back a variety of emails from people that were, hey, we have a bunch of things we'd like help with, but we don't know exactly when it would end or what that would look like. So I actually worked with a couple of them to help kind of define what those bite-sized projects would look like. But the first one was pretty easy. They were raising funds, and they had just received back a product from a Stanford design firm that was helping rebuild the product after they brought it out of Flashpoint. So both raising funds and helping with that product and put the initial story behind it was those were pretty discrete projects.
Yeah, and all in line with your past experience.
Yep.
Awesome. So the Made in America project, tell me about that. Like, tell me about, is there any aspects culturally that you ran into, like different challenges, or, what did that look like?
Yeah, so it's the Made in America movement, and started by a woman who's now friends with my wife and I named Margarita Mendoza. She started about 10 years ago, and it was a passion project. And when she first started it, it was one of 8 or 9 similar organizations, and it had grown to being the organization. So they now represent 20,000 American-made businesses. And so they had grown as a passion project, really with huge growth and publicity out of it. You don't necessarily work through the processes and systems that you need to fully scale. So they had 300, maybe 320,000 people consumers within their organization. That's much different than getting 3 million. So right. From a culture perspective, it was great from passion, but they didn't have the systems in place to kind of watch metrics that matter. So we've actually helped them a lot kind of go through and to some degree kind of burn down the former organization to rebuild it back now with systems so that passion can scale now and actually tell at a much larger volume the stories from both those 20,000 businesses and the families that rely on those businesses.
Got it. Sounds like an amazing project. I need to look it up and learn more about it.
It's kind of fun. So.
Oh, fantastic. So you're currently with Ethereal, and then you worked on a project for a little bit of a period of time for, I guess, 18 months, different projects in and out. Before that, and I think, the time we spent the most together was you had Sidekick. Yep. So with your current business being mainly you and your wife, how many people did you get up to at Sidekick? What kind of challenges did you have? What are some kind of culture lessons learned?
Yeah, so we had about a dozen full-time people.
Okay.
But we probably had, over the course of 2.5 years, maybe as many as 40 interns. We kind of were an intern organization in some way. I really believed in internships as more of apprenticeships. And from a culture perspective, I'd done that at a previous organization as well. And it's really from a place where if somebody can go through, as kind of Gary Vee talks about as well, if somebody can go through and mentor him, mentor underneath him for, 2 months, what would that look like for their organization?
Right.
And so we try to kind of set up things like that. So I really kind of believe from a culture perspective with bringing on, people that would like an opportunity. So if you're going to do grunt work for me as an intern, I'll pay you minimum wage. But if you really want to dig in with me and learn much more, that's a very different kind of relationship. And some days, we brought on one kid named Sai Madali, and Sai was awesome. And then a couple days later, he popped up and he goes, I have a friend. Can I bring him with as well?
Nice.
And I'm like, well, I don't think we can take anybody else. But culture, when you're really giving back to people and kind of serving in that way, tends to just proliferate, and people want to come on board with it.
Yeah, I found pretty much the same thing in that, we've had interns over the years, and I enjoy having them in, and, you get different levels. And I think you really captured it when you said, we can pay you you can be a paid intern and you can get minimum wage and you can do the work. But if you really want all the value, then you're going to have to apprentice, and that's a different relationship. And I would say, the best people we've ever had chose the apprentice route. I know we had one guy, Walter, who was just the most amazing intern that we ever had, and it was that apprenticeship style where it's like I wanted him to be at my side, the kind of the right-hand person for as long as we could keep him around. So lots of exciting challenges there. What were the challenges in managing such a large cohort of interns?
Separating training, like actual formal training for them, giving them discrete tasks to work on so that both they could grow, but it also could help the organization. And in some cases, most of them I like most of them personally. So making sure that it could keep that relationship with them as kind of a mentor to them rather than just as a friend. There are times, I always want my teams to be, to feel like it's a family. I want to be friendly with them. If we go for drinks after hours, by all means, we can talk about real personal stuff. But personally, I found it's really hard to have multiple relationships with the same person. So if I'm mentoring you now, then that may mean that I'm not your necessarily closest friend at this time. And so that was probably the biggest thing, was just making sure what those roles were at what time. So could I kind of speak to the same person that I might have been friend, and some of the people that worked with us, I was good friends with before they came on the team. And so we could still have that at a different time, but that's different when somebody's trying to hit sales numbers,
right?
And you're coaching them through that. That's very different than asking, how their wife and family is.
Right, definitely. So before Sidekick, was it Vitru?
It was Vitru.
Vitru. And how big did Vitru get to be?
So Vitru was about 120, maybe 125 people before we sold to Oracle.
Okay.
And so it was about that size, and to some degree, I actually was taught a little bit more of kind of the apprenticing there as well, because our founder, Reggie Bradford, in addition to my roles there, like I actually went to like all of our investor meetings that not only I set up, but with our existing investors like Sequoia. So the one-on-ones that would normally just be the CEO and the partner, I'm at dinner with them, time in and time out. And so being able to really see the insides from Reggie that most people would never get the time to kind of witness.
So would you say being an apprentice and apprenticeships are kind of built into Kurt's culture, like who you are? Is that just ingrained in?
I think so. I mean, it's a way that I try to give back as much now.
Okay.
But to some degree, I've had really good mentors in the past, and one of them actually kind of corrected me when we first kind of started a relationship, because apparently I was not a very good mentee.
Okay.
And
I've had that happen before.
Yeah, and he was pretty harsh on me about it, but I needed that at that time in my life, and he really kind of shifted my entire business philosophy and how I lead teams. But he was very direct. He was like, "You do not take my advice. You do not listen to my advice." He was all sorts of very direct feedback. And so I've really kind of taken more of the approach of I want to be a good mentee. And in that case, I'm also looking for people that are, to some degree, wanting to lead themselves well. So I often will look for that person that they've got their own plan for, like, do you have a character plan that you're building out? Do you have a business plan about who you want to grow to be? Even if it's informal in your head, and kind of look for those people.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. I did some mentoring at Terry College of Business, and it was one of my first times doing that, and it was a lot of lessons learned for me on how to present the information in a way that is collaborative and be a good mentor. And then I also got an experience with different types of mentees. Yep. Where some people really took it in, and you could tell that they were taking that knowledge in and using it, and other ones seemed like they wanted to argue with you about whether what you were sharing was right. It's like, well, it is what it is. I've spent the money going through it, and I know you're getting your business off the ground, so some of these things are hard to hear, and it's your baby, but you have to be a good mentee at that point as well. Yeah.
And in both cases, I mean, one of the reasons too is just like, I think I'm a better leader because I'm helping to mentor others, often because it's very hard for me to see flaws in my own leadership style, my own character even, but I'll see them in somebody else. And as I'm talking to them about that, I notice, oh, this applies the same to me, or maybe sometimes 10 times to me.
Oh yeah, definitely. I have some of those where it's like, waiting to speak instead of listening. You want to cut people off sometimes, or I tend to try to. I tend to do that, or have in the past. I've gotten better at not doing it, of course, and being a better listener. But yeah, those are those flaws, and I see it in other people sometimes. I'm like, he keeps cutting that person off, and it's like, wait, I think I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, company culture-wise, worst company culture story you can share, and you don't have to name any names of the company if you don't want to, but what was the most toxic, what was the most disastrous, or the biggest lesson learned? What can you share?
Yeah, I guess without telling names to not incriminate people, I was at a end of the year holiday party at someone's house. A lot of the leadership was there, and the gentleman who was hosting the party, his probably 5-year-old daughter came up and kind of, I think more to show a point, but in front of everybody in this close group, pointed to the mom and said, Mommy, who is that man? That's how little time he spent at home.
Ouch.
And from an organization perspective, they were really good. They had done really well over a very short time, but they did not do well over the years, because they actually had so much family turmoil. When the leader was leading that way and spending so many hours in the office, all of his team was doing the same. And so as the personal lives kind of started to fall apart, so did the work at some point. I mean, when something happens, it's hard to kind of close a sales deal when everything's changed at home. Right.
Yeah. There's a certain level of burnout, I'm sure, for a lot of people based on, their traits and who they are. And then, all those things come home to roost at some point in time, I would say.
Yeah. And I mean, and we, to some degree, that organization, I mean, we both saw that. And at the other times we'd been hiring a number of people from a large international consulting group that was known for shouting, cursing, and in one of the interview processes, somebody pointed out, and we're not opposed to flipping over tables if it proves our point.
Got it.
That's not exactly while they hit numbers, that wasn't always the people that we should have been bringing in. So it took us a little while of both learning how that was affecting our culture, that we couldn't always change some of those people, and then kind of filtering some of them back out.
Yeah. So what's the balance there? Because, I hear horror stories about, a certain company grew hyper fast to billions of dollars, had all this funding, and then, like maybe the CEO gets ousted for something or whatever it might be. And when I look at that, I say, well, yeah, that was, when you look at it, that at the end of the process, like some of the things that were happening there were fundamentally wrong. But also the inverse is, they wouldn't have gotten there, at a rate of speed if certain teams didn't have a personality to go out and really, compete, right? And, barring there's lots of bad ways to do things and there's lots of good ways to do things. But what do you find is like the balance, right? When you talk about a sales team, a lot of times, you get polar opposites. But at some point, there is a certain personality that's built in that makes them successful.
There is, but I mean, I think it does depend on whether you're talking about success in the very short term or over the long term.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times on the sales side specifically, we'll get that, you'll see that a-hole that comes in,
right.
and they'll kill it at numbers, but not only just a lot of their customers not necessarily like that. A lot of the internal product team, you'll see higher churn, because every time they interact, that engineer's like, I don't want to talk to him again or her again, and they'll leave, go to another company. So I, kind of believe the standpoint that if you're ruffling people's feathers that bad, you don't need to be part of my organization. I mean, fundamentally, everything for me at this point is mission first, people always. And so if you're not respecting the other people on the team, in some cases, respect is saying hard things that are hard for other people to hear. It's not always being soft and kind.
Right. Kind of 5 dysfunctions of a team, create some challenge in the environment for the best.
Yeah. But I mean, there is a place where if you're growing fast or you're trying to turn a ship, there's going to be difficult discussions that have to be had. But whether it's in culture or the same thing with marketing, it's like I want to tell stories that are long term, and I want to make sure that people ultimately that they feel like their life is better from coming into the office. And maybe we fail, but we're going to fail together. And to some degree, from a culture perspective, everything's above the table.
Kind of looking back, your companies have progressively gotten smaller, right? I'm guessing there's some balance and other factors that come into play there. But when Vitru was growing and you were a part of that, what were the biggest challenges in maintaining the culture? Like, what was it at the beginning? What got dropped off that you think maybe could have been kept? What needed to go? How did that look from a scaling perspective?
Yeah, I think from a scaling perspective, I mean, when I came on board, we were growing pretty quickly, and we had not started the inside sales team yet, and so it was starting to kind of create that bullpen of inside sales, and there was a hyper focus on getting that mid-market sales to start going, and having an environment where they thought it was fun. Margarita machines in on Thursdays. And that was great for the team environment, but it also kind of created a little bit of a clique within the larger organizations. And so I think what we did well is we created yet another team within the organization that grew really well and achieved their numbers and loved each other. And a lot of those people work together today at other companies now. But we did kind of create a clique within the larger organization then. So
Gotcha.
I wish we kind of wouldn't have necessarily done that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talk about it a good bit for larger organizations because I always get the question like, well, how do you balance culture when the organization as a whole has a culture, but there's kind of what we call subcultures, right? There's a different vibe when you walk in a marketing department versus a sales versus operation and dev, and those need to be that way for a lot of different reasons, but you kind of have an overarching theme on what you will and will not tolerate as an organization.
Yeah, and I mean at Vitru, I mean we did do a good job of overall keeping still like a family feel. I mean, it felt like a family. It maybe smaller families together, but still it was a big extended family in a lot of ways. And a lot of ways that was led by Reggie Bradford. I mean, where he would bring in 1 to 2 of his kids every Friday into the office, and that made other employees consistently feel like they could do the same. And so people have a lot more headphones on Fridays working, but you also knew you were working for something else. So,
what are some other things that you guys did at Vitro that you felt were unique or that gave people like the permission to be themselves, like bringing their kids in or anything else? What are other examples?
We were really focused on mission first. I mean, there were things that needed to be accomplished. At that time, I mean, we were one of the two only platforms in the market for big brands to manage everything they did on social media. If you think about Procter & Gamble, everything they did on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, in any language anywhere in the world went through our platform. And so it was really us and our competitors and a bunch of other kind of running at the same time companies. And so when it's just 2 companies and there's a lot of money and it's fast growth, you're having every feature that comes out is an important thing because people will switch. Yeah. And so we had a lot of hard goals, but they always kept front and center. That's what was focused on. And a lot of other teams too, like Kathleen Chandler, who's now the CFO at Terminus. I mean, people that were very much mission focused for making sure we were hitting numbers, but cared about people.
Got it. So in caring about people, you have some core values. I'm going to name a few of your core values, and I want to know a little bit about, maybe where they come from and what they really mean to you. So let's start one near and dear to my heart. Metrics matter. So we do a lot of metrics and measurement before we do a culture initiative, and that's one of our unique aspects of our business is we measure first and then we implement. So where does metrics matter come from? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it does come fundamentally just from a numbers perspective. I mean, if people play different when you keep score. I mean, even if I have friends over to play poker, if there's no chips involved, or there's it can be $50. That's still something different.
Right.
And so I was at a company called Navtech that's now called Here. We took the company from $85 million a year in revenue, and in 10 years took it to $1.22 billion.
Nice.
With a public offering, and then later getting bought for a much larger number. And so we grew so fast because the market was growing. But if I really am honest and I look back at where we were at, we lost a huge bit of potential revenue. Because as long as the gross revenue number was growing, that's all people kind of cared for. And if we had really been tracking and being really open and transparent internally with all of our other numbers, I mean, our revenues might have grown another 20 to even 50% as much. We just weren't tracking those numbers, and so hey, as long as things are increasing, we're good.
Right.
And I love that team, but how much lost opportunity we had there we accomplished some huge things. Like, what could it have been? So since then, I'm pretty much across the board. Like, we're tracking numbers across the board and everything. And they don't always have to be like just sales where we're closing something right then. They can be leading indicators, or sometimes almost a net promoter score for, do people want to come into the office because do they like it?
Yeah, definitely. I heard I was on a panel a few days ago, I guess it was, or last week. And I think it was Billy Bowie had mentioned, he's like, yeah, if on Friday all of your people are like posting on social media, thank God it's Friday, and want to get out of your office, maybe that's a bad indication of what's going on.
Yeah.
You want people to want to be there. So that goes back to your net promoter score and some of the other surveys that we do around, like, do people want to show up? Are they happy to be there? Are they happy to be there through Friday?
Yeah.
And the weekend is fun. Everybody likes the weekend, but they're not in a rush to get out of there.
Right. And I look to there's a big lagging indicator for me about culture, is that how many, what percentage of your hires are coming from internal referrals?
Gotcha. I like that.
I mean, by all means, some cases, not everybody knows, what positions you have out there. But if I enjoy my office and you're my friend, I want you to come work with me. I want to spend more time with you. And if I know this is a good environment, I'm going to intentionally look for ways to bring you into that environment then.
Yeah, that's a great indicator. I love that number. We're gonna have to share that out on the social profiles.
Well, a lot of HR people I found, though, it's kind of funny. I ask them, though, I'm like, so, where do your best hires come from? And they go, well, usually from employee hires. Well, do you pay referral bonuses? No, well, we used to, but a small amount.
Yeah.
But they have no problem paying an outside recruiter
Large sums of money.
Large sums of money.
Yeah, well, I think the most memorable one from me was I think David Cummings had done it at Pardot. It was like some astronomical amount. I think they would give a $10,000 employee referral, because he's like, well, if it's a $100,000 employee and it comes in through a recruiter, it's going to cost us 20 grand. So 10,000, I'm actually saving money, and they're really happy to get the referral bonus internally, because it's normally like $250 at other companies. It's very nominal.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to that people don't really dig into.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, just that's also part of David's approach for loving on his employees as well. So
yeah, definitely, and they'll send in all their friends, hopefully.
Yeah.
People that you want to have on your team. All right, so we will do one more. Let's do, which one resonates here? Mission first, people always.
Yeah. I mean, I have a large number of friends that have worked in cutthroat businesses, that are change agents. They'll come into the burning ship of a company and turn it around. I have a cousin who kind of took that role from the Bobs from Office Space, where
Right.
he interviews people like
He's the Bobs.
He's the Bobs. Do you want to keep
Nice.
your job? And he's a great guy personally, but that's a really hard place to be.
Yeah.
In some cases, that's just numbers matter than anything. But I mean, there are times where I have to hit a quarterly number, but in general, I'm personally joining organizations where we're looking for growth in kind of that 3 to 5 year time frame. And so to do that, you have to have healthy relationships at the office, at home. I want people to take time off, whether that's a sabbatical for you,
Right.
or whether that's just taking Saturday or Sunday as a Sabbath, but you need to be able to rest, and it's helping people find those patterns. And so fundamentally, I think if you keep either one of those two, of mission first, people always, if you just keep one of them, the pendulum swings too much in the wrong direction.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you look inside Chick-fil-A, they very much care about numbers, but it's always people first.
Yeah, I mean, you can get that when you're in their restaurant, right?
Yep.
It's the customer, it's them. They're giving scholarships to their people. What is their leadership style? Sorry, it's eluding me now, even though I've used this as an example like 20 times. So yeah, their leadership style, all of that is all about people.
Yeah. So and that's actually something I picked up from
servant leadership.
Servant
That's what I
leadership.
was looking
Yeah.
for.
Well, and it's a different approach too. I mean, when it's people always, if somebody's really not delivering. I mean, there's very few circumstances you'd ever have to raise your voice and yell at somebody. And I mean, I've been guilty of that as well. But if you really go back to like the old style view of what like a servant looked like, you go back to Roman times when somebody was a
Right.
servant of a household, how would that person have responded to the master of the household?
Yeah.
Whoa, that's a very different approach than the way, I used to take, the way I used to lead. And so if I'm taking the time to kind of sit back and think about where my emotions are before I respond to a really good or really bad situation, it's a very different approach for how people feel.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so last thing I've got to ask you about before we wrap up. You recently got to go to the White House.
I did.
Tell me about that.
So yeah, June of last year, we got a call from the White House to help organize a symposium around the Made in America movement and American companies. So we were able to bring, I think, like 13 people to the White House for the initial first event in C-SPAN, and sit with President Trump and Mike Pence and a variety of others within the administration.
Very cool. I'm sure that's a pretty amazing experience to go to the White House and, sit with the sitting president, vice president, be on C-SPAN. I mean, that's a lot of I guess educational experiences. I don't know if you've done that before, but
I had not done that before.
Okay.
It was really cool to be behind the scenes where very few cameras ever get to go, but also just to continue telling the stories that we had before, not just of the Made in America movement itself as that organization, but literally of the 20,000 businesses they represent and the families behind them. And so being able to talk about what that looked like was actually really kind of cool and kind of brought all of our marketing and storytelling together.
Nice. So before we finish, biggest takeaway from that experience. What do you feel like was the biggest lesson learned? Biggest takeaway? Being
humble. With the current administration, we all hear a lot of rhetoric. No matter who would have been the president, I'd been happy to show up. But the behind the scenes time with everyone from the president down lower in the administration, behind the scenes was very different than public. But me personally coming back from there, of knowing something that, hey, I was able to go to the White House. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But in the end of the day, I was no different the day afterwards, heck, the hour afterwards, than I was beforehand. And I was actually only at the White House because I've been telling stories and kind of being a servant leader for years. And it ended up being something pretty cool and a great experience. And we were able to make sure that Margarita, the woman who founded the Made in America movement and who runs it, was able to go and kind of showcase the baby that she had put together.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like a fantastic experience. Well, thank you so much for coming in, sharing your story, all the way from, billion-dollar companies down to, something that I'm sure gives you a lot more time and comfort these days, as well as your visit to the White House. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Epic Company Culture Podcast with Josh Sweeney. If you enjoyed this content, please subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. For additional content and transcripts, visit epicculture.co. If you have questions or topics you would like us to address or expand on, tweet us at epicculture1 or email at podcast@epicculture.co.